Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Steph. It is July, and a lot of residents will be graduating and starting work as new staff doctors. In today's career advice episode, we will be talking about opening your own clinic. Joining me today is Dr. Amjad Kadim Sadeh, AJ for short, who had an unconventional path after graduating from family medicine residency at Michael Garron Hospital in 2018. He decided to purchase his own clinic in residency with his wife Mary and started building up his practice there instead of locuming, eventually becoming a startup founder of a physician assistant AI app called Pippin. So thank you, AJ, for joining me in office hours today. I have a lot of questions for you about costs and your business plan, but first I wanted to know what prompted you to take this unconventional path after residency.
Yes, and thank you so much, Dr. Steph, for having me on your show. Uh, Really an honor to be here. Absolutely. So the conventional wisdom that we get during residency and beyond is to locum first, right? So get out there, locum, see what's out there. And I think that is helpful and really like a good advice. My unconventional wisdom is if you know what you want, then go for it. If that's like sort of your dream and what you want to do, then my approach is like why delay that? Like if you actually really know what you want to go for. So for me, in residency, as you know, we get bounced around from rotation to rotation. And what really attracted me to family medicine to begin with was that continuity of care, right? Like having your patients, you follow them over time. And I just didn't want to go from place to place, learn about like, the specifics of that particular location, invest in that, and then move on to another location and then repeat that process. So I had that vision early on in my second year of residency that I wanted to have my own place, my own sort of clinic, my own practice. And so I started to work towards that. Yeah.
And so, what kind of conversation did you have with your wife, Mary, about this type of path? Like, does she go with it or does she question it in the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. So Mary is a huge part of the success story. Yeah, I had a discussion with Mary. We weren't really thinking about that before, so I brought it to her and I, g gave her sort of like my vision, what I thought I could do. That this is going to be my career, right? I wanted to have a space for me to really go for the rest of my career in, right? And I laid out to her the plan, the overhead, like sort of like how that will come to be. And she was very supportive. Obviously, it's like a big risk, right? Like investing in that, the buying and the building and all that. So it's a huge cost, but yeah, she truly believed in it, and then we sort of started working on it together. And yeah, she's co-owner, and that has been a huge part of the success.
For sure. And so, let's talk a bit more about the costs because for a lot of new grads who have student debt, the
Yep.
cost of starting their own practice is a big concern for them. Can you
Hmm.
kind of break down what it costs to do this in Toronto, where your clinic is,
Yep.
from, for example, like the cost of the commercial unit, the
Yep.
lawyer, renovation, and IT?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So, just to set the scene, so what we have is we first purchased a commercial unit that was a street front, so it's a retail commercial unit, and it was empty. So we actually had to develop it into like six exam rooms and a pharmacy and doctor stations and staff area. So it was purchasing the real estate, building it, and then of course putting in all the infrastructure, the IT, for example, the medical supplies, the furniture. So yes, it was a big project. It was $1 million project between the real estate, the development, all that stuff. Um, Legal fees were a small portion of it. Really, the big cost is the real estate itself, the purchase and the build out. Um, so yeah, it was $1 million project, and that was back in 2018. So like costs have obviously increased since then.
Gotcha. So the
Um,
million is both the cost of the empty commercial space plus the renovation.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And
So
yeah,
yeah, it's doable. We can talk about like how we did the funding and how did that play out.
yeah, like
But yeah,
that was going to be my next question because where's a second year resident going to come up with $1 million, right? So
yeah,
how did you come up with the startup capital for that? Like, did you use family and friends, savings, government grants?
yeah. We had a small saving amount. So actually, a very small proportion of it was saving. The rest was lending from the bank, and that was actually more complicated than you would think. So it's not just simply go to the bank, get money, and they'll give it to you. The reason for that is although banks look favorably on physicians because we have potential high earning, um, I did not have that established yet, right? I was still in residency, on resident income. They typically would want to have at least 2 years of, high earning history before they entertain that idea. So it actually required me to have a business plan, a vision, go to different banks and really try to sort of negotiate a deal before we were able to get that. But they funded the large majority of that amount. Yeah.
Gotcha. And just to clarify, was Mary doing her PhD at the time, or did they have to look at her finances too?
Mary was working at the time, so she has already finished her master's in epidemiology, and she has been earning as working as an epidemiologist. So this was before she went into her PhD studies. Yeah, so
Gotcha.
she has her income that yes, hopefully contributed to that. But again, as a grad of master's program, it's still required a lot of like negotiating. And actually, we went to like many different banks. We went to all of them, and really only one came through for us because the we had that sort of the vision that we told her, she believed in it, and the banker really facilitated that. She believed in it. She made it happen essentially.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
it's great that you were able to find a bank, maybe instead of going to like a private lender, which could have higher
yeah,
interest rates. And it does
yes,
sound doable. At first, $1 million is quite a lot of money, but it sounds doable in the grand scheme of things when you think about residents after they graduate, they might be getting a mortgage for their
yeah,
residential home, for instance, and often
yeah,
banks are willing to lend for residential mortgages. Out of
yes.
curiosity, which bank was it that you ended up going with?
Yeah, we went with Scotiabank. Yeah. So
Okay.
again, like we reached out to all of them, including private lenders, and that was going to be way, way more expensive, of course. But yeah, we went with Scotia. That was the only bank that agreed to this.
And can
Yeah.
we talk a little bit about the interest when it comes to commercial mortgages and how that might differ for someone
hmm
getting a residential mortgage?
Yeah. So Um, the way it was structured is it owner occupied versus non-owner occupied. That was a big differentiator. So me starting my own clinic where I'm gonna be the owner who resides there, works, not resides, but works out of that space. Um, they look more favorably to that compared to, let's say, I'm just sort of investing into a second location that I'm going to bring other physicians to work in. Um, so I think it was like yeah, it's an open line of credit plus mortgage. So we had a line of credit for the development, like the actual build out, and then the mortgage for the real estate piece. And it's open, so you can pay it down whenever you can with no penalty. And yeah, I believe it was like prime prime percentage. Yeah.
Okay,
So it was
so
at prime, yeah, which is quite favorable. Again, that's where like being a physician, banks look favorably upon
and
us,
was it
right? For
also a variable or did you get like a fixed prime rate?
it was variable, yes. So the costs have increased,
Mm.
since then. But thankfully, I was able to pay down quite a bit already by then, by time
Yeah,
interest
especially
rates
since
started
you
to
got
fall.
an open mortgage instead, right?
hmm
And
Exactly.
and it sounds to me like a lot of the commercial mortgages tend to have less favorable rates compared to residential mortgages. And that's usually the case for, new grads listening in on this as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
Some doctors, when they graduate and want to start their clinic, they might consider renting instead of buying a commercial case space like you did. How
Yeah.
did you make that decision to buy rather than just to rent a space?
Yeah, we definitely looked into both options, and it would have been a lot easier, a lot simpler to just rent out a space. But part of the vision is I wanted to create a really good space for me and to bring in other physicians to work. And so I didn't want to spend so much money on building, right? Like developing something that I don't have ownership in because the landlord can potentially increase the prices later on. You could actually leave, and then what's going to happen to my practice, my roster of patients. So I wanted to have that like sort of peace of mind to sort of say I have this real estate that I own that I can sort of have the guarantee that this will be there for me, right? Um, and that actually comes in very handy when you think about the overall project because you have a real estate asset in addition to sort of what you're making as a doctor and plus like the revenue coming in from the tenant, which was the pharmacy. So as an overall project, that actually contributed, I think, to the success of it and to selling that vision to the bank and to even to Mary as well, right? That this is an asset that we're building together. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like someone buying a house, for example.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and from my perspective, like for our clinic, we ended up renting just because
Hmm.
we didn't want to deal with the cleaning, the fixing of the space, because it is a very high traffic area. Like medical
Yep,
clinics tend to be like people coming in and out, washrooms get
yep.
used up, the floor gets dirty, and then the clinic that we rent from, their landlord has a property management company that comes and cleans the space and does the renovations for us and fixes things for us as well. Um,
Great.
just
Yeah,
some more information about the renovation and then the cost of IT.
yeah.
How did you find individuals to renovate who has experience in renovating a medical space?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So this is really sort of a theme that Mary and I have followed over time because we don't have particularly expertise in building and construction, right? This was like sort of where we were learning as we go. But I think, maybe the advice is you surround your people with the right people, and you allow multiple people to sort of compete, and then you find what's the best fit for your project. So again, we had a vision. So we wanted 6 exam rooms, a pharmacy, staff area, 2 doctor stations, right? And so we put it out there. We first hired the designer, right? And so we've had multiple designers come in, and some of them were just saying, no, this is too busy. It's not going to happen. It's not possible, right? The one that we went with, she's like, yes, yeah, we can do it. Here's how we're going to solve this problem. Here's how we're going to do it. And so, you allow multiple people to come in, and then you see who's the best, right, for that job. And then same thing with the actual construction. We put it out there. This is our vision. These are the designs, the drawings. How much is it going to cost? And plus, like not just the price, but that team, like what do they bring to the table? How do you feel about like that team overall, right? It's not just about the cost itself. And so we went with a construction company that was more expensive, but we felt more like they're more trustworthy, right? And of course we vetted them, right? We checked the references. Um, we interacted with them, a few times before we actually went ahead and signed the deal. So yeah, I think, and that same process actually we followed with Pippin, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But I think, as physicians, we may not have specific expertise in like that domain that we're sort of going for outside of medicine, but if you bring the right people, you go through like a process, I think we're able to achieve quite a lot, right?
Gotcha. When you said you put it out there, where did you put it out to? Um, how did
Like,
you?
yeah. Sorry. I invited construction companies to come in and sort of give me a proposal, give me an estimate, right?
Gotcha. So you just found them
So
on Google, like you searched them up yourself?
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. We searched, we looked for. we looked specifically for companies that do medical clinics,
Mhm.
right? So we didn't want to hire a company that does both residential and commercial. We wanted to have like a team that specializes in medical slash dental clinics. A lot of them do both
Right.
medical and dental. And this team, that's the one that we went with. That's what they focus on. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so I just
Mhm.
want to touch a bit about incorporation because some
Yeah.
residents, when they graduate, they're thinking about incorporation. So for
Yeah.
yourself, before you made the purchase and went through with developing this space, did you
Yeah.
incorporate in residency?
Yes, actually, I had two corporations in residency, which is kind of crazy as a resident. I have two corporations. But yes, we needed a corporation for the real estate piece,
Yeah.
and then another corporation for the medical professional corporation. Now, interestingly, at the time, because I was a resident, I didn't have my full license yet. I couldn't have a medical professional corporation. So we had a numbered company that was then amended into my professional corporation. But I needed both because that's how you sort of negotiate and have like that contract with the bank.
Exactly.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. And for someone who's doing this not in residency, who's doing it as a staff physician,
yeah.
generally, if this is a medical clinic, it is okay to just have one corporation. You don't need like a holding company or anything like that.
Yeah, I think yes, you can definitely do just one corporation for both the real estate and the medical component, but it's there's pros and cons
Yeah, like the
for
legal
that.
liability, right? If you have it.
Exactly. Yeah, there's pros and cons for that, but yes, you can do it both together. Mhm.
Gotcha. Did you use your line of credit at all? Like your professional line of credit?
No, we really got the loan from the bank for this. We had a little bit of savings, but the rest of it was like a new
Just
line of credit, which was specifically for that commercial real estate plus the renovation. So we actually had two separate like loan agreements.
gotcha. So you
Yeah.
mentioned that you had to put together a business plan, and this was
Yep.
extremely imperative for you to get the
Right.
loan for your renovations and your units.
Mhm.
A lot of new grads don't learn about how to put together a business plan, right? So what kind of
Yep.
research did you do to develop yours?
Yeah. And I'm gonna say like for new grads, for example, like if you think about our careers, right, going through so many stages, right, being a med student, being a resident, we get exposed to so many different projects. We learn a lot, right? And so we are able to actually learn new skills, uh, develop expertise along the way. So, so I would say, like, don't reject the idea out of outright to say, oh, this is too difficult, I can't do it, because we can do it. So yes, you're right. When I went into it, I didn't have like business acumen, so to speak. I didn't have an MBA, right? Um, so I looked at what's out there, right? So you kind of figure it out. So I looked at templates of business plans, and there's so many resources out there on that. And I focused, specifically to my needs, to my vision, right? So if you have the vision, then you can fill in the blanks, right? So for me, what I wanted to highlight is the location in the business plan, that there's no other clinics in the area that are accepting patients. This was a real need in the community. There's a beautiful neighborhood. So there's a real case to be there both on the real estate as well as the actual business. And then the second piece was like the projections, right? So in the business plan, you're looking at the numbers, right? So we costed out every single item. So what is it going to cost to actually run this clinic? Um, beyond the build out, these are like the numbers to actually run it, right? And then looked at projections. And the business case that I made is, well, you're going to have the real estate and a pharmacy that will pay into, this real estate. So you're going to make one revenue stream from the tenant. You're going to have your own practice as a physician where you're seeing patients, you're getting paid for those services, and you're going to bring in other physicians who will contribute to your, cost sharing and the overhead. So I think that's what I really wanted to focus on in the business, and we costed it out over time. this is anticipated how many patients we're going to see. I tried to back it up with statistics on, walk-in clinics and how much volume they see and all that stuff. Yeah, so you figure it out as you go, and you
Yeah.
get resources. Yeah.
Did you have any established clinics that or clinic owners that you approached where they could share with you their business plan and kind of get an idea of how much it actually costs to run a clinic?
It's interesting you say this because I did try to reach out, and honestly, the advice I was getting was don't do it,
Mm,
which was unfair because I was looking at some of these business clinic owners, and I see that they have more than one clinic, and so I would say, well, like if it's so bad, like why do you have multiple clinics, right? Instead, they were saying, no, 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 don't do it. Just come work in my clinic, or
okay.
so I felt that they weren't particularly helpful. But I got actually advice, so we learned, to look at your BATNA, right? The best alternative option. So I didn't find physician clinic owners to physician or non-physician clinic owners that were helpful. So I actually looked at dental clinic owners as a best alternative, and I have one who I'm still in touch with who sort of really gave us like feedback on the construction, the design, and um, like what it takes, and so that was really helpful. But yeah, like it was my experience was they were saying don't do it. But they have multiple clinics. So my advice has been, hey, if you believe in this, if this is your dream and you want to do it, go for it. There's obviously like things to consider, but it's worthwhile.
Gotcha. And at this time, you were a resident. You hadn't done
Yep.
your exams yet, right? So
Yep.
there's the possibility of not passing your exam and delaying your practice. So did
Yep.
you have any backup plan in case your clinic opened, but you don't have a license?
Yeah, that was that was high risk. Like looking back, it was high risk, right? High risk, high reward, I would say scenario. No, the short answer is no. This was like sort of I was going for it all in. In fact, actually, when we were doing the business plan to try to secure a loan from the banks, they specifically asked about that. And I
Okay.
remember having to look up at statistics and saying the chances of me passing are like this high based on these statistics. So I had to like actually justify that. But no, it just, really added that much more pressure to like really do well. So I was practicing a lot. I had a group of my colleagues that we were practicing together. But yeah, that would have been very, very difficult, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's incredible because a lot of times residents, when they're studying for their exams, that's all they're doing. They're studying for their exams
Yep.
and maybe they're doing their rotations. But you
Yep.
were doing a business plan while studying for your exams, while doing your
Yep.
rotations. So that's a lot of work on your shoulders.
Yes, and I would say it was shared between me and Mary, right? So she was carrying a lot of this as well, and that's why like having the right team really helps. We also had, we've had a lawyer that came in, an accountant, the banker, of course, and so yes, it's a lot of work, but I think part of the message is surround yourself with the right team because they will carry some of that responsibility for you. And to this day, I have that same team, right? So. The same accountant, the same lawyer that have been supporting me along the way. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so I'm curious about your path to profitability because,
Yeah.
a lot of times you talk to clinic owners, they say, don't do it. You either break even or you lose money. And
Right.
often we hear stories in the news about medical clinics facing challenges with profitability, especially when operating in the public sector. So
Hmm.
when you opened your clinic in August, it was just you and an admin and Mary, and you were doing fee for service family medicine. How
Yep.
long did you have negative cash flow until you became cash flow positive?
Yeah. Very good question. So I'll answer that question and then I'll step back and sort of provide a more maybe a holistic overview over this. So in terms of negative cash flow, honestly, it became positive as soon as I started getting paid from OHIP, because I was busy on day one, right? This is the nice thing about being a family physician providing comprehensive care. You are needed, right? So on day one, when we opened the clinic, I had a full schedule of seeing patients. So it just took like that many weeks to get paid from OHIP. then I started to have positive cash flow, right? Now, of course, like to step back and think about profitability in this context, you really have to look at three things. One is the asset that you have, in our case is the real estate, the actual revenue that you're bringing in as a physician, um, and the third is the overhead itself, right? Um, so for me, my vision was to own a real estate asset, have the ability to increase my revenue by having the right space, the right environment, the right support, right? And third is to reduce my overall overhead, right? By bringing in other physicians. So I think, like when you think about that, you have to look at all these pieces together, because I'll give you an example of like way to uh, really increase the revenue that was directly related to me being the clinic owner, and that was when we switched from FIG to FO, right? Um, Doing the same work, same hard work, my revenue increased just by switching to that model, and me being a clinic owner has really facilitated to do that very quickly. Whereas if I was working in not my own medical clinic, that may have taken a lot longer. That's actually what happened to some of my colleagues. So we were able to switch from FIG to FO literally within 4 months. As soon as the deal came through between OMA and the government, which was April 1st, within 4 months, we became a FO on August 1st.
Of
Some of my colleagues
2018 or
of
20?
20 of 2028, sorry, 2022. So
Okay.
August 2022. So within 4 months of the deal actually come to be that they're allowing more FOs to be established. We were able to convert within 4 months. Some of my colleagues, they didn't convert to FO for like 16 months, 18 months because they weren't making the decisions themselves. It was really hard to for them to do it. Whereas like me having my own clinic, I took like sort of active like measures even before the deal uh, came through to work at getting that done. Um, and so that's like one example of how, being involved really helps increase your overall revenue. Um, I was also able to bring in other physicians to the clinic, and that reduced my overhead because we're cost sharing. And then yeah, and then the real estate, of course, like we're, paying down that mortgage and
Like
owning.
renting to a pharmacist, like you mentioned as well.
Yeah, renting to the pharmacist, so you're getting revenue coming in from the pharmacy, and they also contribute to like the cost. So we also share some cost with the pharmacist, right? Because they do like TMI, right? Taxes, maintenance, and insurance. Um, yeah. So I think, my feedback would be again, if you're a motivated, new grad or you're in residency and you're thinking about opening your own clinic, if you think about these pieces and you're able to work towards each of these ingredients, then it is worthwhile. Yeah.
And so, just for the audience, FIG is largely a fee-for-service type of model. And when you convert it from FIG to FO, you convert it to a largely capitation type model. Just to clarify a little bit more about the actual numbers, because you said you started becoming profitable or having positive cash flow within 4 weeks of is having patients. So, how many patients were you seeing in a day to generate a positive cash flow?
Yeah, it might have been a little bit longer than 4 weeks. You're just waiting for OHIP payments to come in. So it takes a bit of time initially when you get started. But certainly like a few weeks you start to get payment from OHIP. Um, yeah, like I remember like day one, I think I had like 20 patients. Day two is like 25, day three, like 30 patients a day, right? And then
Okay.
so you're pretty quick, you're pretty full within 2, 3 days, right? And then obviously you still pay a lot of money towards the overhead, right? When you're just starting out, but that shrinks over time,
Mhm.
and
And
the
how much would you say your overhead would be? Because I guess like 20 to 30 patients a day is actually not a lot from a fee for
yeah,
service perspective, especially if each patient is about $37
yeah,
in terms of the OHIP payment.
yeah.
So you have that on
Hmm.
one hand as the revenue coming in, but on the other
Yeah.
hand, what were your kind of overall expenses like?
Yeah, and so you can be really lean. So when I first started, right, I only had one admin. So I was responsible for only one salary, and I didn't have anything else, right? Then I brought in a nurse to support me, right, to be able to see more and be more efficient, right? And then that also helped recruit other physicians, right? When they come in and they see that they have an admin and a nurse, right? It's different.
And then you have a
So
mortgage as well to pay,
yep,
and the
yeah, the
utilities,
mortgage,
right?
and then I was paying down the leasehold improvement, which is the cost of construction, um, and the other stuff, obviously like EMR, medical supplies, and so on. But you can start really lean, and then build it over time. So now we actually have four full-time staff to support the four physicians in our clinic.
Mhm.
Um, and so your overhead like also increases, but your percentage goes down because your your fixed costs, you're also paying them down. Your cost sharing between the doctors. Yeah.
And it sounds to me like maybe in the beginning, even though you were cash flow positive, the overhead might have been about 40% or so. And then once
Yeah,
you started recruiting more people,
I
that went down to 30%.
yeah, it was actually 45% when I first began. So yeah, again, you have like a big like sort of loan for the mortgage, a big loan for the build out, right? And you know the costs were really high at the beginning, but then yes, that comes down. So yeah, the overhead percentage has come down. We're a cost sharing model, so it varies a bit, um, but it's much more manageable. So plus like it allows me to have great supports in place. So I could reduce my overhead even lower if I wanted to, but I want to have a good like environment, right? I want to have good supports in place. And so yeah, I'm in it for the long haul, right? The longevity. But yeah, I hope that
Yeah.
answers
And
it.
you also talked about when you started recruiting more
Yep,
doctors, allied health and
yep,
office admin, that's kind of
yep,
when you were able to be more efficient and your overhead
yep,
started coming down. What are
yes.
some pieces of advice you want to share about the employment search process?
Yeah, absolutely. So, recruiting family physicians, as you imagine, is the most challenging, most difficult piece
Mhm.
because family doctors are in shortage, and they don't want to take on this commitment unless they feel comfortable that they're going to be well supported and they have good work-life balance. Um, so that was actually part of from you know of our vision from the very beginning is to how do I create a great environment that compels physicians to come join me. So it started with having the right space, right? So we're in the beautiful neighborhood in the Upper Beaches in Toronto. Um, the space is a street front. There's lots of sunlight coming in. It was a beautifully designed Scandinavian style clinic. So I wanted a place that people, physicians, would feel comfortable coming in. They feel happy to be there at work. So that was the space piece. Then the second piece was having the right people, right, in there to support them. So this is why I sort of insisted on having a nurse, right? Because we wanted to have that efficiency and that support. There's a pharmacist on site who provides great support to doctors. And then me as a resource, right? Physicians come, we talk to each other, we help each other out on difficult cases. They come to me for support on referrals, the billing, right? So me being a resource is also really helpful. And then of course we have great administrative staff that really help us with our tasks. So that's the second piece is the people. And then third was the technology. We wanted to have a good EMR system. We wanted to have all the connections to facilitate our work, like OLIS and HRM and Connecting Ontario and like all these things. And later on, we added more resources like Scope and e-referrals, like just always thinking about how do I make the technology works for us for doctors. And now, of course, AI. So we're AI powered, which I'm super excited about in our clinic. So yeah, like really, like when physicians who are trying to recruit other physicians to join them, you really have to think about all of these pieces together and have like a whole package that compels. doctors to come in and take on this commitment.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
did you also have an employment lawyer draft contracts?
Yeah, the same lawyer that I've had from the very
Mhm.
beginning, who helped me from the very beginning, yes, has drafted employment contracts for both the allied health as well as the physicians for the
Yeah.
agreements.
I find often it's hard for family physicians not to recruit other family physicians because they have the network, the connections through residency programs, but more so recruiting the allied health and the admin staff. Where did
Mhm.
you go to recruit nurses or front desk staff, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So same philosophy actually also applies to allied providers,
Yeah,
um, and the administrative staff. You still want to provide a great environment for them to come in and work there. Um, so we went for Indeed. We rely on Indeed heavily for recruitment. Um, yeah, I think that's actually has been the most successful like source for us to recruit nurses and administrative staff.
right.
And part of it is you're sort of saying, come work here, this is why, right? And how do we provide great support for them as well, right? So for example, for our staff, like we provide benefits because we felt like that's really important, is to sort of like invest in them as well, and just give them that peace of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, so same approach. You're really trying to like at all times you're kind of selling your vision and why this place is great for everyone to be in. So yeah, we've followed the same approach. Yeah.
Yeah, and also there's a lot more you have to learn as a clinic owner about employment law as well, right? Like
Yeah.
making sure your the staff that you hire have a probationary period, just to
Yeah.
make sure that you're properly vetting them for
Hmm.
what they do, and making sure you establish regular periods where you're evaluating them, making sure
Yeah.
they're doing the work that they're assigned to do as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. All of the above. And again, like it's hard for us to have expertise in so many different areas.
Yeah.
So for me, like it was relying on the right lawyer to have these clauses in place. Like I didn't even think about some of these things that you mentioned, but they of course have the expertise, and so they've included some of these things, and then yeah, following up and following through. So yeah, when you have administrative staff coming in, you want to make sure they're doing the tasks right, and like how to have a conversation if things are not being done right, to sort of like have that difficult conversation
Yeah.
to sort of address it. We thankfully we've had great staff to come to us. We've been very, very lucky. They've been amazing. So that's been great.
That's great. And I know that you
Mhm.
also had a pharmacist as well. Did you have like a real estate broker to help rent your space to a pharmacist? Was that how you got a pharmacist in?
So this is where it's amazing the connections we make, how they translate, right? Later on. So actually, the pharmacist owner um, was I met him during residency. He was part of our residency is you do a bit of shadowing with allied health. You do like a half day with a pharmacist, a dietitian, and so on. So I did a half day with this pharmacist who was on the ground floor of where my residency site is, and I spoke to him, and I had that like half day, and then I went on with the rest of my residency. But I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, I have this project. Are you interested?" And
Mhm.
that translated to our partnership, which is
Wow,
insane to think
that's
about.
amazing.
Yeah, and so he came in, we met. He again believed in this vision, and then yeah, we had a lawyer to draft everything and negotiated. But it's incredible, right? Like the 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 network that we have and like the people that we see, it can lead to sort of more and more encounters later on. Yeah,
Exactly. So
yeah,
fast forward to now, you have a clinic
yeah,
of 4,700 patients, four physicians, and a nurse. What
yeah.
does your weekly schedule look like as a clinic doctor, a clinic owner, family doctor, and as of June, a startup founder? Can you kind of
Yeah.
break down how much you spend in terms of time for each role?
Yeah, I'd say it's busy. So I have a full roster of patients. So I do half days per week doing clinical medicine, right? And then the management of the practice. Thankfully, that has I wouldn't say it's autonomous, but it has been sort of like running largely on its own. I do have to step in. I do have to um, spend some time towards that. But because it has already been established, so we've been in practice for 6 years, we've actually developed like protocols in place and ways to deal with things as they come up. And again, you empower the people, the staff to take on responsibility. So that has largely sort of been working itself out. Um, uh, on its own. And then me, yeah, being a startup founder, that's taking a lot of my time because I'm building it, right? I'm actively sort of working on that. So that's taking a large proportion now. And my evenings, my weekends, I love it. I love doing this. And that's kind of how my schedule breaks down. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you also talked about how you decided to start the Pippin AI, like there's your startup,
Yeah.
because you wanted to make your clinic more efficient, provide an extra service to the clinic doctors that work with you. And so
Yes.
when it comes to starting Pippin, what was the building process like of its features and its user interface? Like, how did you decide to recruit designers? How did you decide what features you wanted to have?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just mention what Pippin is.
Yeah.
So Pippin dot AI, it's a software for family doctors like myself and the doctors in our clinic that really helps us with the paperwork and the admin burden, right? So it helps us with charting, like the scribing feature. It provides other features like clinical insights like differential diagnosis and treatment. Drafting referral letters, billing optimization. So that's sort of like how it is right now. But what really prompted this initially was exactly what you said, which is, you have this administrative burden. How do I make my practice more efficient? Um, to give you an example of this, because we hear about it in the literature, right? It's 19 hours per week, but for me, like on an emotional level, on a visceral level, how was that? Well, my last appointment is supposed to be at 3:50, but I wasn't leaving the clinic till 7 because of the paperwork, right? All the documentation, the referrals, like all that stuff. So it was taking so much of my time just doing that paperwork, which is unpaid. It cost us like so much money. I think we sort of did a calculation where it's like costing like 96,000 to 200,000 a year of our time that's unpaid. Um, so that's what prompted me to sort of say, well, we need to fix this. And initially, I actually looked at what's out there. I looked at other AI companies, and I've had some demos in our clinic to see. And I commend what they're doing. They're trying to solve this problem, but I just felt that it wasn't enough for like it didn't have enough value for me. It was a little bit clunky and so on. So that's what led me to create my own AI company. Um, so happy to, yeah, let's talk about the build out of it. So
Yeah, because you
first
had like an
we
80-page document, right, of your vision, kind of like a
yeah,
business plan again.
exactly right. So yeah, again, coming into this, I didn't have background in software development, right? So I wanted to focus on the vision and then bring in the right team, right? So yeah, Mary and I, we sort of sat down and worked on this together. And we thought about like, what is it that we want this software to do, right? You're starting from scratch. You're sort of saying, here are the things that I think would be amazing, right? These are the things that take a lot of my time. How do I sort of solve this problem? So yeah, we laid out in our plan in that document the features, the requirements like privacy, all the like sort of the qualities of it that we wanted, that is versatile, that it works on any device, for example. So all of that was written out because then we were going to go and sort of get a team to come in and say, okay, we can build this for you, and this is how much it costs, and this is how long it will take. So again, we had to like have that like, really laid out in detail, and that's what we did. Um, so kind of similar to how I built the medical clinic, we followed the same process, right? have the vision, lay it out, and then go out there and sort of elicit um, proposals from teams and designers and developers on how they're actually going to do it and how much and how long it will take. And we went through many rounds of interviews. I think we did about 7 rounds of interviews before we landed on this team who's amazing. So the team has designers, developers, software engineers, and a product manager. And they were miles ahead of everybody else. So they follow a very robust process, which was first they had a discovery phase. So look at all the details, go over that document, edit it and give feedback on that document. They did interviews, market analysis, talking to other physicians to see like, does this make sense? What are the features and everything? Then they moved on to the design phase. So actually, how does it look like? All the workflows, from one click to the next. And this is where my experience as a practicing family physician becomes very important because I was clear on like the pain points that we had. And so every feature, every click in Pippin really reflects like sort of our reality as busy clinicians and how to, make sure we minimize like those clicks and those like sort of um, yeah like inefficiencies, right? Then they actually did the development, right? So then that's when the coding begins. And then of course there's testing that happens throughout the process. It was very iterative. This is a year-long process. So we started thinking about Pippin in June of last year, and we just launched June last month.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's been a wild ride. I learned so much along this process, and it's so exciting to see it in action where it's saving me 2 hours a day, right?
Yeah.
So me as a practicing physician, saving me 2 hours a day, extremely valuable.
And is it compatible with all the EMR systems?
So it's a standalone software. It's EMR agnostic, so it works on any EMR. And that actually was a strategic move from our part. I'll tell you more about that. But yeah, but it's a simple sort of on its own. It's a web browser, so you log in
Mhm.
to in at app.pippin.ai, and then you start an encounter and then you copy and paste into whatever EMR you're using. It works on any device. It synchronizes between devices. So if you're using it on your phone, it will synchronize immediately on the account, yeah, on the computer, for example. Yeah, we wanted to have a standalone solution. I'll tell you why. I find that the EMR softwares that we currently have were really built pre-AI, right? And I think they may be replaced. So I wanted to focus our energy, our resources, our time, not on integration, but actually building an amazing software that works regardless of which EMR to use. So that was our sort of strategic
Yeah.
choice for
And
that.
for your clinic, you guys use TELUS PSS for your EMR, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we use it. It works perfectly. Like the format is maintained. When you copy and paste it into the chart, it works perfectly. It's very seamless. Yeah.
And how did you get this funded? Like you self-funded it, or did you apply for government grants?
Yeah, it was a combination of two, largely self-funded, and then we did apply for some government grants that we were able to secure, but largely it was self-funded. Um, yeah.
And so looking to the future, what is like your goal for your clinic and your startup? Like, do you plan to open more clinics? Do you plan to be an entrepreneur full time?
I think so. For me, like I really want to continue on being a clinician and an entrepreneur, right? I think there's great value in doing both because again, like I'm using Pippin in my own practice, and I see like the benefits of it right away. And if there's areas for improvement, I give that feedback back to the team, and we build other features and we make improvements. So having like doing both is really valuable. I think right now my focus is to get Pippin to more doctors. It's been really gratifying to see doctors go to become sort of like their clinics are becoming AI powered. I recently helped a colleague sort of implement Pippin in his own practice, and he was speechless, like in terms of like how much time this is saving him, how much efficiencies is creating. So it's really been gratifying to support other family doctors with this transition. I think that's my focus right now is to sort of get it out there, let people know about it and continue to build it. Yeah.
Gotcha. So I'm going to end with five rapid fire questions, and these can be
Yep.
answered in a sentence or less. So
Yep.
number one, what is your favorite book that startup founders should read?
Zero to One by Peter Thiel. I know he's a controversial figure, but the book is amazing.
Cool. Number two, is there a Canadian startup founder that you look up to? Could be in health or other fields.
Yeah, I would say it's Tobias Lutke from Shopify.
Yeah,
Obviously, Shopify being a great Canadian success story. Yeah, I look up to him. Yeah.
sounds good. And number three, what is a piece of advice for a new doctor entering family medicine?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say invest time in building systems that will have like sort of return on investment of that time that you did. So think about like creating resources along the way that you will come back to and will help save you time in the future, right? So really focusing on like building a system as opposed to just doing one-offs, because that really helps. Yeah.
Okay, number four, what is something you do for wellness amidst all the roles you juggle?
Yeah, I honestly love road trips. So actually, the idea of Pippin came to Mary and I when we were on a road trip in Nova Scotia. We were doing the Cabot Trail, and it's just like road trip, seeing beautiful nature, just really unlocks your imagination. So I love doing that. Yeah.
And number five, your wife is a big part of your success. What is a piece of relationship advice you can offer?
Oh, I don't know if I have the answers, Stephanie, but I would say I'm incredibly lucky. I found an amazing partner, and actually a lot of it is unforeseen in terms of like how we come to like work together on the business initiatives as well. Like for example, like with Pippin, she has the background in epidemiology and AI and data science. So that wasn't like foreseen, but it's just like sort of putting our heads together. And yeah, I'm incredibly lucky.
Yeah, it sounds like your advice is about the importance of teamwork, getting your partner actively involved in what you do so that they understand what your job is, right? So,
Yes,
so thank
absolutely.
you, AJ,
Absolutely.
yeah, for the informative interview today. Finally, where can viewers reach you if they want to approach you for advice or want to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn. That's one. With Pippin, just reach me directly at team@pippin.ai. That will come to me. Uh, I'm available, happy to chat. And yeah, if they are thinking about starting their own clinics and they want to talk to me, I'm totally available for that. I'll be very transparent. So yeah, I'd love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Steph, for having me on your show. I love that. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I'll put all those links in the description below as well.